She had thought it would be just another quiet walk with her son, a moment of peace in a world that rarely gave her any. But in that instant, a suspicious glance from the stranger opposite seemed to balloon into something far worse. Every step she took thereafter felt dangerous, every breath heavy, as if the world around her had already judged her without knowing her name. She was not running. She was not hiding yet. Somehow, she became a target. The moment that followed would expose a truth far more painful than she ever imagined. What actually happened that day, and why was she singled out at all? She had always lived quietly, moving through the world with the kind of caution life had forced on her. Alana, a single black mother in her early 30s, balanced 2 part-time jobs, long commutes, and the stress of keeping a roof over her son's head. Most days felt like a race she never quite finished, but she kept going for him. Every morning before the sun would rise, she whispered the same promise to herself: just get through today. Her neighborhood wasn't the safest, but it was all she could afford. But she tried to turn their tiny apartment into a warm space, a place where her son Malik would feel safe, even when the outside world did not always view him as such. His teachers praised his gentleness. His neighbors marveled at his curiosity. Yet Alana knew that the world could move its gaze onto him in a different manner at any instant, one that transformed him from a child into a menace. She left work a little later than she normally did. The store had been short-staffed, and the last customers filed out of the store, making her feel the familiar tension of time start to tighten. Her bus was running late, her phone was dying, and her paycheck was already being stretched thin. She tried to shake off the frustration, reminding herself that small setbacks were normal. But there was something different that night, a feeling of unease she couldn't put a name to. As she walked past the shut shops, a pair of headlights slowed behind her, lingering longer than they should have. She felt the sharp chill in the air, the empty street, the way her instincts suddenly seemed sharper than her thoughts. Alana didn't know it yet, but she was moving toward a moment that would test everything she believed about safety, fairness, and the promises she made to her son. And once it had begun, there would be no turning back. It started with a small thing, small enough that for most would have gone unnoticed. But for her, it was that shift in tone, the way the cashier's smile fell the moment she stepped forward. She had entered the store with no more than hope and a whispered prayer, clutching her son's torn backpack and reminding herself to stay calm. She wasn't asking for charity, just any expired pastries they were going to throw away. But before she could finish her sentence, she felt the eyes turning toward her, sharp, cold, assessing. In came a manager, not out of curiosity, but suspicion. His stare didn't see a mother struggling. It saw a problem, a threat, someone who didn't belong. And even as she spoke softly, explaining that she only wanted something for her hungry child, the air around her grew heavier, as if the entire room had agreed some invisible line was crossed. Her hands shook, not from shame, but from the familiar sting of being made to feel less than human. She tried again, offering a soft smile, but the manager's expression had hardened. He leaned in and whispered something to one of the staff members, who looked at her with discomfort before quickly walking away. She had no idea what was being said, but she could feel it, judgment building, walls going up, decisions about her being made before she might have a chance to defend herself. And then it happened. Somebody came out from the back, phone in hand, watching her with the kind of caution reserved for danger. Her heart sank, and she had lived long enough to know what that meant. She stepped back instinctively, her voice barely steady as she explained she wasn't here to cause trouble. But nobody listened. Nobody asked her name, her story, or why she was desperate. Assumptions spoke volumes. Customers started to whisper to one another and shifted away from her, as if hunger itself were contagious. Her son tugged on her sleeve, confused and frightened, his small voice asking if they had done something wrong. That question hit her harder than the stairs. And if she thought it couldn't get worse, the front door chimed. A man stepped inside, well-dressed, confident, clearly someone who belonged in a place like this. He paused when he took in the scene unfolding before him. The mother shrinking, the staff freezing, tension sharp enough to slice through the silence. He didn't know her, and she didn't know him. But in that moment, something shifted because, unlike the others, he didn't look away. He watched closely, his eyes narrowing as he realized exactly what was happening. And when the manager stepped forward as if preparing to remove her, the stranger's stance changed. His attention locked onto the injustice unfolding before him, the kind that didn't make headlines but happened every single day. What he would do next was something nobody in that store was ready for. Neither was she. It all fell into place as he entered the darkened parking lot, the whispers, the stares, the security tailing him since he stepped foot into the store. They now stood in a tight circle around him, hands near radios and belts, faces twisted up in the same cold suspicion he had grown up learning to fear. He tried to stay calm, breathing through the panic rising in his chest, but the accusations came fast, sharp, and humiliating. They said that he stole something. They said that he was acting suspicious. They said his presence alone was a threat. He slowly raised his hands, attempting to say something, but the weight of their anger cracked his voice. One officer stepped closer to, close, shoving a flashlight toward his face, as if the color of his skin would show his guilt. His knees weakened as memories of every story he had ever heard names turned into hashtags. Lives reduced to headlines rushed through his mind. He felt the world closing in on him, the fear that one wrong breath could cost him everything. Then came the moment that shattered whatever calm he had left. The officer unclipped something from his belt. A taser. The click echoed like a warning shot in the cold night air. The crowd that had begun to gather fell silent. Time slowed. His heart pounded so loudly, it felt like it echoed off the concrete. He could feel himself shaking, not from guilt, but from the terror of becoming another tragedy. He tried again to explain, voice shaking, but the officer raised the taser higher, ready to fire. And in that split second, under the harsh glare of the flashlight and the weight of every eye watching, he realized this was the moment that would define everything. Not just for him, but for everyone who would hear his story. Would this be the night he lost everything, or the moment the truth finally came to light? But even after the chaos had at last subsided, nothing seemed the same. The world around him moved forward in a steady stream. Cars passed by, people speaking, life returning to normal as if nothing ever had happened. Yet he felt the weight inside him of every single second that he had spent wondering if he would live or die. His hands shook for days afterward, and the quiet times he had found solace in now just reminded him of how fast everything could be taken away from him. He tried to fall into the routine again, but everywhere he turned, there were shadows of what happened. Friends told him to move on, to stay strong, but they didn't understand that one moment of prejudice could shatter someone's sense of safety. They didn't understand the world could look exactly the same and feel a complete opposite. He wasn't just recovering from fear, he was recovering from the truth it showed him. A truth he had always known, but now felt in his bones. Yet even in the pain, something shifted. The community rallied around him. Stories like his began to surface, each one echoing the same message. This wasn't some isolated moment. It was a pattern, quiet, deadly, and all too common. His experience sparked conversations, then gatherings, then voices rising together in demand of something better. He never asked to be a symbol, but in surviving, he had a responsibility he could no longer turn his back on. Standing, months later, before his neighborhood, stronger, loud, and unafraid, he knew that it wasn't about reopening the wounds of the story. It was refusing to let silence be another weapon. For if this can happen to him in the middle of a quite ordinary day, how many more are living with such moments buried inside them? And how many more before the world finally decides that enough is enough?